Dr. Craig.
Here.
Dr. Schultz.
Here.
Dr. Brent.
Here. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders past, present, and future who call this place Anaskoya, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue the tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community, their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties and continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Now I'd like to move on to the consent agenda. Are there any?
I'll move adoption of the consent agenda. I'll second.
All right, we have the motion by Topliff and second by Schultz. Is there any public comment on this motion? I see none. So I'll go to a vote. All those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. And this motion passes 5-0-0-2. Now I'm going to move on to the public comment period. At this time, any member of the public may speak on matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board of directors that are not on the agenda. The board will not take action on any item not on the agenda except as provided by law. Is there any public comment at this time?
No. Honestly, no.
All right, I see no public comments, so I'll move right into our discussion action items. We have item 4.1, resolution 24-8.
This is a resolution for the 10-year remembrance of the May 23rd, 2014 tragedy in Isla Vista. It's the same resolution we passed last year with updated information, mainly including the time to gather on this May 23rd at 12 to 1 p.m. for an event we're hosting with other groups who we have.
Sorry, I got kind of disconnected here. All right, so we have this resolution for the Isla Vista tragedy. Is there any questions, or would anyone like to read any parts of this resolution, or want any attention?
I think it'd be great to read the resolution.
Okay, I'll go ahead and read this. So this is resolution 24-8, resolution of the Board of Directors of the Isla Vista Community Services District honoring the lives lost during the May 23rd, 2014 tragedy. George Chen Yuan Hong, Wei-Han Wang, Catherine Cooper, Christopher Ross Michaels Martinez, and Veronica Weiss. Whereas on May 23rd, 2014, 6 lives of Isla Vista community members were lost to senseless violence by a sole perpetrator. And whereas those who lost their lives are George Chen Yuan Hong, Wei-Han Wang, Catherine Cooper, Christopher Ross Michaels Martinez, and Veronica Weiss. And whereas 14 other community members were injured by the perpetrator as the incident took place. And whereas Isla Vista law enforcement acted bravely on the evening of May 23rd, 2014 to end the incident. And whereas this tragedy motivated by hatred, misogyny, and racism was felt across the entire community and came after an already difficult year for residents. And whereas the community came together in the aftermath at Anaskoya Park on May 24th and Harder Stadium on May 27th, 2014 to memorialize the friends and neighbors that were lost. And whereas the Isla Vista Love and Remembrance Garden was established in People's Park by community member Jordan Kilbrew and the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District, with support from the Associated Students, UCSB Office of Student Life and Art Department, the Pan-Hellenic Council, local businesses, and more community members. And now, therefore, the Board of Directors of the Isla Vista Community Services District hereby resolves as follows. The community members George Chen Yuan Hong, Wei-Han Wang, Catherine Cooper, Christopher Ross Michaels Martinez, and Veronica Weiss, lost on May 23rd, 2014, are remembered and memorialized. The IVCSD encourages community members to come together as is comfortable and in the remembrance of this day and those lost at the Love and Remembrance Garden on May 23rd, 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. and to participate in other opportunities hosted by community groups. All
I'll move to adopt the resolution.
okay. Okay, we have the motion by Topliff and the second by Craig. I wanted to just give some short comments real quick. I didn't prepare something super long or interesting, but normally we look at this resolution this day with a lot of sadness, and there were a lot of tragic things that did happen, but as somebody who got to live here during the period before and the period during, and now this beautiful period after, I'm really proud of Isla Vista. I'm really proud of the CSD. I'm really proud of IVRPD. I'm proud of UCSB and the way that all of these groups through time use this one moment that was very sad and hurtful to come together and to make Isla Vista a little bit safer, step by step, for everyone who comes here. I know it's a long journey, but I believe that this 10 years is a huge mark of success. Isla Vista has lost other community members since then to things that are sad and hurtful, but we haven't had to deal with this kind of problem of hate on this magnitude. And I'm really proud of just the way this community has grown to become more loving and more accepting and to have more joy again and not to lose its joy. So this day can be sad, but I want everyone to look at it with some joy and see where we are now. If anyone else has any comments they'd like to share from the board, or if there are any members of the public who would like to share any comments. Grant.
I really appreciate what you just said, Marcos. I think that it's very well put. And, you know, when you look back 10 years from anything, you know, the best that you can hope is that that things have gotten better. And, you know, I thinking about this, like, was asking myself the question of, like, could this happen again today? And the sad reality is that it could. In many ways, the underlying motivations of hatred and misogyny and racism that were manifested in this event have not gotten better in society. They have become more prominent, and I'm not sure if more people hold those views, but the people that do act upon them more. But at the same time, the likelihood that it happens is also reduced because we as a community came together, we advocated for change when it comes to gun control, and there were laws passed specifically that would have intervened in this situation, and law enforcement uses them all throughout the state of California and has prevented over 50 additional instances like this, 50 additional mass shootings from happening, is what the research shows. So I think that's really great. It is a sign of progress, and the fact that we exist and can even come together today and pass this resolution is also a sign of progress, because community leadership and finding a place for us to have a vehicle to make the improvements to address some of the underlying cultural issues was a huge demand that came out of that time. So, you know, I feel both hopeful and I feel very daunted by all the tasks that we have ahead, you know, when looking at asking myself that question, like, could this happen again? But I think that should inspire us to move forward.
Thank you for these comments. We had the motion to pass this resolution on the board. Is there any public comment on this motion?
Yeah, it was a sad day. We were in Fresno and started getting phone calls from our management company. Shots fired on Segovia. We didn't know. We were, 3 hours away by car. And then it's the night we're on the news started coming out. Came home on Sunday. It was sad to see, these people that we knew that were close to. I've been living at the time. It'd been 30 years, 28 years I've been living it. But we talk about racism and misogyny. Anybody of any color, race, or ethnicity can be racist. Anybody of any color, race, any male of any color, race, ethnicity can be misogynist. The issue here was a mental health issue that issues that can be addressed better in the future. I think there's been a lot of progress made in it too. The ability to check if someone's in possession of firearms based on their driver's license information. Progress made in that. But we're a great community. I echo what Director Aguilar said. We're a great community here. And while the potential exists for that to happen, it can't happen anywhere. It can't happen here again. But acknowledging that it has happened and there were lives lost. That's the hardest part of it right there. It was sad to come back home to. I encountered the same thing back in 2001 after the David Adams incident over here in South Blue Target. And I was gone for the weekend and came back on Sunday. And it's no different. So it has happened twice, one with a vehicle, one with a gun. Regardless, lives were lost. Those lives are never coming back. Something to think about. But we are a great community. We have to move forward from a lot of those things and things to stay, keep an eye on things. Watch over your day. I always say this, watch over, be accountable and responsible, not just for yourself, but for others as well. We have the ability to stop people from doing something. Let's practice that ability. Let's fight about something.
For those comments. Seeing no further comments on this motion, I'll go to a vote. All those who are in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. And this motion passes 6-0-0-1. Now move on to our second item, 4.2, Deltopia 2024 debrief.
Right, we have Lieutenant Tesla here to present his presentation on how Deltopia 2024 went. I can.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all again. So this is just a brief overview of our experience during Deltopia this year. I'll give you some context for how we adjusted from last year, how we plan to adjust next year, the issues that we saw that we knew, some of the things we've seen in the past. And so one thing I'll preface right from the very beginning is that in our messaging to the public, we try to make this impactful, and I think next year we're going to do an even better job of explaining to the public that this is a medical emergency event, not necessarily a law enforcement event. So it's a medical emergency event that is supported by law enforcement, by the necessary requirements that we have to be there to protect not only the fire and medic personnel, but the people that are out enjoying the day. But this is really driven by the medical emergencies that come out of an event that is unsanctioned like this. And so if you can move to the next slide for me.
It's just a little slower.
Sure. This is just a picture from the day. We estimate, and our obviously we don't go through and count every single person because that's impossible, but we estimate that we had about 30,000 people here this year, which is double what we had last year. So word of mouth is out that Deltopia is back after the pandemic, that it's fun. We had great weather this year. And so we contacted people from as far away as the East Coast, Colorado, the Northwest, all over the country, people who were told by their friends who go to school here that Deltopia is the place to be on that weekend. And we saw that in the citation numbers as well, which I think I have later on. But that's just a view of Deltopia, and that's just the 6600 block. So you don't even see the curve of the 6500 block that goes out of view, and which is as packed as this, right? And then you have 68 behind you too, so, and 67. So it was a lot of people. We saw the party this year move more into Isla Vista too, not just on Deltopia, or on Del Playa, excuse me. So lots of events at other houses. And I'll touch on some of those experiences here as we go. So for us, we call it a deployment period. That was the 5th through the 7th. That's Friday through Saturday, or excuse me, Friday through Sunday. So we started enhancing our police presence by Friday at mid-afternoon, and we maintained a large police presence throughout the weekend. All bureaus of the Sheriff's Office participated, meaning we have people from our Court Services Bureau, our Civil Bureau, our Detective Bureau. Pretty much it was all hands on deck for us for an event like this. And it was more consistent with what you'd seen from the Halloweens of years past. And we had a lot of activity in Halloween. UCPD was again working this in cooperation with us. And what we typically do is kind of split Isla Vista down at Trigo Road, and the Sheriff's Office takes everything south towards the ocean, and the UC takes everything north to El Colegio. That's roughly what we did this year, but we added enhanced staffing to what we call the public nuisance teams, which were teams that were mobile, going around enforcing the new ordinances that you all supported and that we had passed earlier this year, which proved to be incredibly effective. We had 2 allied agencies with us on this one. We had a small contingent of Santa Maria PD officers. 6 of their officers were with us to assist us just with staffing on the edge of campus. And then agents from ABC were out with us as well. ABC comes out to Deltopia every year, at Halloween every year, and they're out most weekends here in Isla Vista. So they're very familiar with the community. It's the same agents that typically work those events. And they were tasked with business enforcement in the loop, making sure people weren't selling to underage people or people who didn't have IDs. And then we also took an ABC agent and placed them on each of those party enforcement public nuisance teams to investigate the parties that were selling alcohol or possibly serving underage or doing that sort of stuff. So it was a different strategy that we used this year that turned out to be pretty effective. We really tried to get the media push out. I think I did like 24 interviews myself. Our PIO was very active. We tried to do social media. We did a social media video in advance that we tried to target other universities with, hey, here's what to expect when you come to Deltopia. Can't have open container. You can't be drunk in public. Please watch your, don't take drugs from strangers, that kind of stuff. We tried to get that out in advance. It was, again, like other past years, a pre-declared mass casualty incident. I know those words are not settling to people, especially given the conversation you just had. But what it is it's the public emergency services term for activating our countywide emergency services and activity with the hospital. So when we declare a mass casualty incident, the hospital gets resources they don't normally have. They up staff as well. They open more beds, and we anticipate that there's going to be casualties to this, and there certainly were. Certainly no fatal casualties, thankfully, but there were overdose casualties, alcohol overdose casualties in this. Specifics, this kind of gets in the weeds a little bit, but the sheriff's response team were the deputies that you would have seen if you were out. You saw them out on the street on Deltopia. That's our crowd control team. They were responsible for the majority of the presence on Del Playa out in the street. We had those public nuisance teams were dedicated solely to shutting down the illegal parties. We shut down 13 of those illegal parties that would have been legal last year but are now illegal, that were over 250. That were selling tickets, that were allowing people onto the roofs or allowing people onto the bluffs over their balconies, right? And so we shut down 13 of those parties. That proved to be incredibly effective at keeping a lid on the size of the parties. Because what we didn't experience this year were those massive 3,000-4,000 person parties that we did have in 23. We didn't have those this year. We had a whole bunch of small parties, but majority of them were under 250 people. We only had one paid party that we ended up signing out of the whole event because we had gotten the word out in advance. Did a ton of public interaction, and town halls and other Q&As to make sure that the promoters and the bands out here knew that this was coming. And so by the day of Deltopia, we actually only had one offense. And they knew the law too, because I'd actually had conversations with them directly. And we had told that all the groups that you will be cited on that day, and your property will be confiscated potentially as evidence. And that's what ended up happening. And we know from our own investigation that they knew the laws, they were intentionally circumventing them, they were intentionally trying to be sneaky about where the address was, because they knew that what they were doing was illegal. And they're now facing charges with the district attorney's office as a result. That is the first citation we actually wrote on the new laws, by the way. So as I promised, we were going to spend the first 2 to 3 months educating everybody about these changes, doing a lot of outreach, a lot of education. We didn't write a single ticket from February or March. And it wasn't until Deltopia Day, which was the day we told them that this goes live as a real enforcement issue, that we actually wrote the ticket. So I feel like we held up our word on that end of it. We increased RTF teams. RTF stands for Rescue Task Force. Unfortunately, an event like this, when fire and medic personnel go into a scene, they need support and security just for their own safety. And so we have to staff those with sworn personnel to just keep them safe and to help them mitigate their own risks while they're trying to tend to a patient. And we approximately doubled the RTFs this year from last year, and that wasn't even enough. We will probably have to triple the amount of medical response teams that we have on Delphia next year. It's that significant. If you're out, you saw the hard closures that started on Saturday morning. I came in at 5 a.m. that day, and I did a lap around town at 6 a.m. and people were already playing beer pong, mixing mimosas in the front yard at 6 a.m. So it was like, okay, this is going to be a day. And sure enough, by I think 10:15 was when we had our first overdose. So 10:15 in the morning, we're already having overdoses. We did a lot of ABC enforcement. What got a lot of attention, of course, was the suspension of the restorative justice program. That was it was very much a part of our media strategy to generate conversations and discussions around Deltopia and the severity of participating in the event. And it worked. And it's something that we will probably continue to use in the future. And then we also added teams out in the Target marketplace area because we saw lots of tailgating last year and lots of activity out there. We did a lot of enforcement out there with drinking and other crimes, and ended up with contacting even parolees and documented gang members who were trying to come into the area who had no business being in Isla Vista that day, and made some arrests out of that as well. All right, if we can move to the next.
Can I just ask, where did you have your teams that you said were out in the community? Did you say specifically where?
Those public nuisance teams?
The teams where you said that you were identifying parolees and other.
Oh, those were those teams that were out in the ADB were just augmenting patrol. So they were running in 2-man cars. We had 3 2-man cars, so 6. And they were their job was to make contact with people who were tailgating in the parking lots of Target or Marketplace.
That's right. Okay.
Or
that's
in the
what I
neighborhoods
missed.
around there. And through that context, that's where we ended up with some of those. I mentioned a ton of media. This is just a smattering of it.
Sorry, can I ask one thing?
Sure. The DUI who crashed at the checkpoint. So if you want to get attention when you're driving, crash your car at the checkpoint. Bunch of media outreach we did.
It's a delayed laugh.
One thing I really want to thank you all for is the support with the door hangers, because we try to get out in the public, especially to you and your team, because we try to get out in the public and like converse with people, but they don't follow us on social media. I start talking, they turn their ears off. But those door hangers are super effective. And I think that they have a nice neutral tone to it. It's not coming from us, right? And it's got a lot of good information that's not just law enforcement heavy. But those, I think, in my 2 years here, I found the door hanger campaigns that we've done to be some of the most effective outreach we've done, updating people on what to expect. And so thank you for that. We also flyered all the businesses in the loop because the laws changed for them on audible music for the weekend as well. So we wanted to make sure they knew what was coming. We talked about it in our RJ classes leading up to Deltopia. when we got word of parties that were planning to be, charging or serving alcohol, or charging for alcohol, or large parties, we were serving cease and desist orders in advance, basically saying, we know what you're up to, stop it. That was rather effective. And we did like I said, we did our social media campaigns. And also the band and promoter town hall that you organized, I thought was hugely helpful because I got to make eye contact with all those people that I was just talking about and say, here's what's coming. And you can ask all the questions you want. And we're going to have a nice, mellow conversation about it tonight, because I didn't even wear a uniform. It came in low key. But here's what to expect for the next 2 or 3 months. And we've got a lot of compliance as a result of that. And I think it was hugely because we got them all in the same room. So thank you.
Just a quick question, the laws for the businesses that change, what are those? Did you have to write any citations or?
Nope, we didn't write any citations, and it just basically says that even their music, like Woodstock's has the amplified music outside, or Super Cookies, you can't have that. All music gets shut down at 6 p.m. now. And so it was a little ambiguous in the
Gotcha,
whole
so
laws.
it's more just the 6 p.m. thing, it's not a during the
Correct.
day thing. Okay,
Correct.
so
Yeah. So it's just a reminder for them that, hey, you got to turn off your external speakers around 6 p.m. All right. Next would be, we got next. Okay, here's our stats, what everyone wants to know. So in 23, we had 60 emergency medical service calls. Those are 911 calls or calls where a deputy calls for an ambulance because of the need for somebody. This year we had 106, and that doesn't count the people that were treated at your tent at Little Acorn. With that amount, it's about 156. So we're looking at not quite triple the amount of medical calls from 23. Thankfully, we didn't have any deaths this year. We did have 33 EMS calls required hospitalization in 23, and only 35 this year. The reason that's so low, though, and the only reason that we didn't completely overrun the hospitals is because we shifted our EMS strategy with our fire and AMR partners to have a ER physician on site at the triage tent to triage the people who really need to go to the hospital versus the people who needed to sleep it off versus the people who needed some other kind of intermediate intervention. If we didn't have that physician at the tent with the support of Cottage, we would have seen hospitalizations closer to about 80 to 86 people, which would have completely maxed out every hospital in the county. We were out of ambulances by about 10:30 a.m. that day. And I mean out of ambulances countywide. We pulled in ambulances. When I say we, the sheriff's office doesn't make this call, but our fire partners do, and our EMSA partners do. We pulled in ambulances from Ventura County and SLO County, and response times throughout the county slowed as a result. So that's one thing we constantly try to talk to people about too, as a reminder that your partying and imbibing on Del Playa truly affects someone who's having a heart attack in Santa Maria and can't get an ambulance as fast as they need to. And that's obviously a message that's hard to kind of break through out here. We saw 56 patients treated at our triage tent, which was right next to Foot Patrol, compared to 37 last year. The citations issued, obviously it spikes but keep in mind, we have double the amount of people attending this year, and we had we have more than double the amount of cops out. And we also had an increase in our medical personnel, which allowed our law enforcement people to spend time doing what they're tasked to do, which is law enforcement. However, we still ended up in a situation where for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, our deputies were overrun with medical calls themselves. They were loading up overdoses into pickup trucks and into minivans to get them to the triage tent because the AMR medics couldn't get to them fast enough. They were overtaxed. Ambulances were stacking 2 or 3 deep and simply couldn't get to them. And so our deputies took it upon themselves to drive these people over the triage tent because they were that concerned about them. We made 31 arrests this year. Obviously, most of them were on Saturday. We had a small amount Friday, really a negligible amount. So again, an increase there, but to be expected with twice the amount of people and an increase in law enforcement as well. And as I said, we had about 30,000 attendees. This doesn't include everybody, of course, so the numbers aren't going to add up. But we did our best to ask everybody, what school do you go to? Lots of people didn't want to tell us, understandably, and we can't force them to. So The locals and UCSB number and the SBCC number are kind of your clue of how much of it came from locals. There's a good chance that most of those locals are UC affiliated, but they just wouldn't tell us. It's interesting. UCLA had a small handful, Cal Poly had a small handful. The schools really had like 2 or 3s, but yeah, I mean 2 or 3 citations per school. There wasn't a lot. UCLA had the most out of county. Even Cal Poly had 3, and we knew there was a large contingent of Cal Poly students coming down. What we do see is a huge amount of citations issued to people from out of county. So again, that reinforces what I told you before about the word of mouth. People are coming from out of the area, being invited by their friends, and causing a lot of the problems that do come in here. So the locals and UCSB affiliates are certainly a large portion of that. We need to address that, but we do have a significant out-of-county presence at Deltopia, and we would love to return to that keep it local feeling of 2015, 16 and such. All right. So the significant problems are kind of the obvious ones too. Alcohol overdoses, a significant amount of them, mostly young females who were overdosing. I worked most of the day very near the medical tent. Concerning, and an alcohol overdose is very much a medical emergency. Like I said, we had the 13 out of control parties that were shut down due to the new ordinances, the overloaded EMS system by 10 a.m. That's really, like, I can't stress enough how, from an emergency management perspective, how dire that was, like how dangerous that is countywide, not just out here, when that system gets tapped out by 10 a.m. And we had a lot of overcapacity balconies and patios still, a lot of education to be done on the rooftops. When we flew our helicopter, people would scatter inside and hop onto the right side of the bluffs. When the helicopter went away, they'd all return. So it was this constant back and forth of trying to shoo them back into the right spots. So we had a lot more education to do there.
Quick question. So you mentioned that 13 parties were shut down with the new ordinance, but so you shut down 13, but only one of those needed a citation.
No, we cited all 13 of those, but they were under the C section for allowing a party to allowing people on your rooftop, allowing people over on the bluffs, being over the 250, stuff like that. But we only wrote one for the paid party section, which is the misdemeanor section, which is the big one. Right. Gotcha.
Yeah. Does that mean that most of those 13 were on Delphi?
Yeah, I think 2 were not on Delphi, if I remember off the top of my head. Again, kind of the obvious stuff, significant impacts on our EMS system, public works, the road congestion, the trash, Goleta businesses, the debris into the ocean, etc. is kind of a constant issue. The parks and the degradation of the parks. We even staffed 2 deputies at each park entrance, or at each park rather, and each beach entrance, and we still had a lot of issues with urinating and everything else that you can think that people need to do when they're partying in the parks. Quality of life issues still remain a significant issue for the people who don't want anything to do with Deltopia. That's not just the long-term residents, but that's the students who want nothing to do with this. There's a significant part of our population that really does not like Deltopia, and their concerns obviously have to be considered in this as well. And then the environmental issues that I mentioned. So everyone in this room knows these ordinances better than most, but this is just a refresher of what we really utilized for Deltopia, what I found to be hugely successful. The festival ordinance, which shuts down music at 6 p.m., is quite literally the biggest tool we have in our small toolbox. When we take away the music, the party ends. And it's something that I think we need to explore, looking at like how can that be utilized in the future and drive people's attention and energy towards something that's more productive throughout the day. We enforce that ordinance all weekend long. And even on Friday night, Friday was, if you remember, freezing cold and windy, so we didn't have a whole lot of issues or non-compliance there. Beach closures are not our decision, but the County Parks Department does follow our lead on typically what kind of enforcement posture we do. They close the beaches. That helps a lot as well. And we always constantly struggle with people tearing down the closures, but again, we staffed it this year with deputies and that helped. And we didn't see a whole lot of people on the beach as a result. The social host ordinance, all the reasons that we were able to shut a party down, I mentioned those already. So that was super effective because it kept the parties under control. And we did see what I thought we'd see, which was a lot of people self-policing their parties. What's interesting is the promoters that were profiting off this a year ago are now utilizing some of the same systems to make sure their party stays under 250 people. So they're using the wristbands, but they're using it to count, or they're using barcodes and QR codes on phones to make sure that they stay under their limit. And we go and contact them and they go, oh, see, I'm at 198 or whatever. I'm good, right? And so they're trying to comply, which is great. That's our goal, right? We have no issue with the parties that continue when they're trying to do their best like that. And then the paid parties and the authorities shut down those parties where we were seeing violence or fights or that sort of stuff was super helpful as well. And that's those public nuisance teams will continue in our plan in the future for sure. That's the last one. So I'm guessing someone's going to ask me, what are we expecting for next year? So I'll just kind of jump to that real quick before I open up for other questions. Given the size of the crowd this year, given the fact that even though we upstaffed in almost an amount triple to what we did in 23, we still ended up dealing with medical emergencies for a large portion of our time. I would expect that next year when I come to you and tell you what our plan is, that it's going to be triple from this year. And we're going to be looking at into the hundreds, several hundred police officers, deputy sheriffs, state agents for future years until we are able to manage the emergency services portion of this event. And so that's what I would expect to happen. I think our fire partners are going to triple their response as well, based on what we saw. And so the footprint of the emergency services during this event is going to get really, really sizable, really, really quick. And so we're going to be spending quite a bit of next year planning for this event. And what we expect to have from it. And the last thing I'll say is CSD put on a fantastic event. We were amazed at how many people showed up and the quality of the stage and all the activity that was going on, and the tacos and everything else. And it was a great draw for people. And it was actually, I'm reluctant to share this because I don't want to encourage people, but it was a funny enough quote as a girl was walking into your event. She was like, "Oh my God, I feel like I'm at Coachella." Which you should all take as a compliment. I cringed because I just thought, oh gosh, I don't want people thinking this is Coachella. But for your event, I thought that was a compliment. So
We'll take it.
Yeah. And with that, I'll just answer any questions right now.
All right, thank you for that presentation. Are there any questions from board members?
I have some questions.
Yes.
So let's see where we, sorry. I wanted to ask about on the stats where you have the locals and the UCSB students, do all those names go to UCPD to identify if those in fact are UCSB students? Do you know if that's already happened?
No.
Okay.
Logistically, that would be really difficult, but also these being rather low level offenses, because all of those are really pretty much either minor in possession or open container,
Okay,
some
got
version of that. It doesn't warrant the kick up to student affairs that some of the more serious crimes get addressed with. So no, there's no double checking their record. We kind of take their word for it.
Okay. And I wanted to ask about if you have done or planning to do the same kind of presentation to the Board of Supervisors.
I haven't been asked to do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, you're at IVCSD, Representative D2 was there.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably sufficient for them.
Yeah.
I imagine given the significant increase that we're going to be looking at for next year, there will be some sort of presentation for next year.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm going to be debriefing to them what happened this year, but I'll probably end up wrapping that up to our explanation next year of what we're doing.
The reason I bring it up is just because of what you mentioned about the countywide impacts in terms of calls and response times. And so it seems like it would be beneficial for the entire board to understand that the impacts of this event are being felt all over the county.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's all.
In our, we call them after actions or debriefs or hot washes, in those representatives of the CEO's office have been there, so I think it's getting relayed. I have no concern that no member of the Board of Supervisors is unaware of how impactful this is in their own communities. They're not who I need to educate about it. They know it's the people here that are kind of draining the resources that need to get the message.
And then I wanted to ask, is OES operational during the County Office of Emergency Services? Are they operational during this weekend?
So I'm going to parse the detail here. Office of Emergency Management
Yes.
is not activated.
They're not. That's what I meant.
Cal OES, which is the statewide mutual aid system, was not this year, but probably would be next year based on the size and that we're going to be asking for mutual aid.
Yeah.
But essentially roughly the same personnel that would be at OEM were at our command post throughout the event. EMSA, us, fire, county CEO's office, that sort of stuff.
I don't know if I have any more questions. The one sneaky people that had a party, they got cited, right? Would they have not been cited under restorative justice, or would it have counted?
No.
So they would
They're
have been cited
not
regardless.
RJ eligible.
Okay, great. That's all. I just want to make sure. Okay, I think those are all my questions. Thank you.
Back when we used to just close all vehicular traffic into Isla Vista for Halloween, are we thinking about doing that in the future?
No, because the logistics of that is kind of a nightmare. Like just handling Trigo North is enough of an issue, and trying to shut down all vehicle traffic. If we go out to El Colegio, it doesn't really serve. It serves people coming in, but if you were, Friday night, people were already moving into town. 217 was backed up bumper to bumper. Los Canals was backed up bumper to bumper. So we'd have to start that like Friday afternoon, and then we'd have to maintain it. And so that was just, we don't have the resources or personnel to staff something like that. And so the reason we block Trigo South is to discourage any vehicle pedestrian interactions, because that's where we know the majority of our pedestrians are going to be in the roadway. So that's why we do it. We don't shut it down to try and keep people out. Someone else asked if we could just literally shut down Isla Vista for the weekend. We can't do that either. But
I think that was me.
what's that?
I think that was me.
Unfortunately, that's not something we're able to do for different reasons. But like the logistics of trying to shut down traffic at El Colegio for what would be about a 36-hour period was too much.
And I was happy to see how the new ordinances were so helpful. And then also I thought it was wonderful how the medical emergency personnel were on foot, and they had those little collapsible stretchers, so they didn't have all the additional complications of getting a vehicle through those crowds. So I thought that it seemed like everything was done in a really intelligent fashion. I thought it was really well handled.
Thank you. Yeah.
One thing that I feel a little confused about in terms of the ordinances, I thought that I understood that the 6 o'clock curfew was kind of for all the residential areas, but for us in the park, we were exempted because we were in a non-residential area. But then if you're saying Woodstock's had to close down at 6, I'm just wondering what that looks like. I don't know.
Yeah, they'd have to close down. They just have to turn the music off, but the ordinance as it was, and this doesn't change. This wasn't a change in the ordinance, but it's been that way for, I guess, since the ordinance started. Was that in Isla Vista in its entirety at 6 p.m. it needs to be turned off.
So I misunderstood when I thought that we could go later because we were in a park.
No, that's always been the law as it was written. That wasn't changed.
And that's for those periods, the Halloween and the
So specifically those weekends, yeah.
I guess I'm confused on that too, because I thought we did have a carve out, but the reason we stopped at 6 was a strategic decision. No.
I think you're thinking of the 250. In the loop,
You have
you can
there is a
go over 250.
There's a carve out for any other week of the year, except for those two, Halloween and October. That is because you're not in the residential zones.
Yeah.
So that is.
So we have a
that's-
carve out at other.
Okay, there is a carve out for us in the regular festival ordinance, but then the part that says nothing on Halloween and Deltopia, that's just everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That makes sense.
It's
I-
what we-
I have two questions. One is, do you think there's value in having the concert that UCSB has at 8 o'clock at night? And have you noticed in your time, well, it hasn't been that long that you've been doing this, but do you have a sense of if that concert is helpful to draw people out of Isla Vista, and does that aid your law enforcement and medical efforts?
Yeah, so, yeah, I don't have a lot of time here as a lieutenant, but I was here as a sergeant and deputy too, so I have the,
Yeah,
experience of these. I've been a bunch of these.
yeah.
I think the last time it actually helped was, I think it was 2014 was when they had Snoop Dogg. And Snoop Dogg was actually still popular with like
Yeah,
We heard
the
that
age
too.
group out here.
yeah.
Since then, they haven't really, it's like,
Probably go see Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
I went and saw Snoop Dogg. I mean, come on.
Everybody wants
Sounds
that.
fun.
Everybody.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
but that's the
so-
last time they had a name like that who
Yeah.
actually drew people and pulled people to that event. I have no idea what the AS program board's dynamics are, so I can't speak to any of their challenges. I know they're having Steve Aoki this weekend
Mhm.
at Extravaganza. That's a big name.
Yeah.
But it would have to be something that happens during the day, not at night,
Yeah.
because we want to get them off camp very well, get them off the fire, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So I was just gonna say,
Just eating.
along, along that lines, I think as you do your planning, starting for next year, it would be really helpful to think of get recommendations from you all about what UCSB can be doing differently. Because I think we've all been kind of a pattern of, we do the same thing we've done the year before, and yet things seem like they're changing. And so maybe there has to be a little bit different type of engagement from the campus to try and help with some of the impacts in Ivy.
The thing I would like to work on, I think would resolve that as efficiently as possible that we haven't been able to do yet, and something that you and I probably have a conversation about on the side is getting access to the student body when they move into the university and when they become residents of our, I say Isla Vista, but the campus community as well, right? And being able to educate them in a low-key environment, but being able to interact with them. And that's not something we've successfully been able to accomplish with the university yet, was to be able to have a dialogue with the students.
Yeah.
I understand there's the desire to keep law enforcement at arm's length in an environment like that, but it's also a double-edged sword because then we don't get a chance to, like I said, educate them.
Yeah, I mean, you either interact with law enforcement when it's okay, or you interact with law enforcement when it's not okay. So it's probably better when it's, when it's neutral, when there's no issues, as opposed to when there are issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that, and I would like to help on that. Sometimes the university is not monolithic. Sometimes we don't all think the same, so we have to find the people that think like us to get things done. The other thing I wanted to ask, and you probably don't know this, but I'm just curious, is I cannot even imagine what the cost is to the county. And when you think of how much you tripled up this year and that you're possibly going to triple up next year, do you have any sense of the cost to the county of for the law enforcement and the medical and all the stuff that you
So
do?
the law enforcement side alone, because I don't have
Yeah.
the fires numbers, I don't have EMSA or AMR's numbers. But the law enforcement side alone was north of $120,000 in overtime. That's just paying for the personnel to be at the event, right? And so there's other equipment and ancillary costs to that, but it's a safe bet that we spent 120,000 plus just on this essentially 18-hour event.
Okay, I checked the county system, it was 300,000 with all the costs.
With everybody,
For sheriff,
300,000?
yeah,
But that's fire and,
just sheriff.
wow.
That makes, I can see where that math came from, because then you're doing all the related stuff. with
Leave,
overtime.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a question. So we have here the note on 13 parties shut down for ordinance violations. What's kind of like the lifeline or life? What does that life cycle look like when a party is shut down? Like what time of day was this happening on average? What, do the people just go and they have to disperse to a different party? Are they now being compliant in the middle
Yeah.
of that up day?
So, I mean, we were shutting parties down all day long, and I would say they got out of control. We probably started around noon was probably the first time we shut a party down, but we were going for the rest until 6. And we could have probably done another 5 or 6, but like I said, those teams had to revert to medical transports for a bit. So I would ballpark, we could have easily shut down 18, 19, 20 parties as a result. The disbursement orders were sufficient to get people out. We didn't see parties start back up. We saw that last year, where they'd wait for us to leave and they'd start up again. There's teeth to it now, so once people explain that, they didn't want to push it. So we had a lot of good compliance out of that, and we really didn't have any significant pushback from the hosts.
And so does that mean like that, like say it's a house party, like it's just quiet now, or are there people having a more like acceptable
It's probably more that, because you're never gonna
Okay.
they're not gonna turn the lights off and lock the
Got
door, but
Yeah.
they're not
Okay.
inviting the strangers or the outsiders into the party anymore.
Got it. That makes a lot more sense to me. Yeah, that's my question.
I just thought of something else. Do you track sexual assaults during the weekend?
Yeah, so I know everyone's got a Google alert for my name, but one of the interviews I did, they asked me if it was a success, and I said absolutely not. The weekend wasn't a success, and I'll never say a weekend like Delta was a success because we had 2 sexual assaults come out of that weekend, but we anticipate more will come in the coming weeks. We often get delayed reports months later when someone finally gets the courage to come forward and report it to us. But in that weekend, we know of 2 violent sexual assaults that happened as a result of Delta, direct result of the activities of Delta. So yeah, this event will never be a success to me with a stat like that.
Yeah.
All right, I don't see any further questions from our board, so I'll go to the public. Is there any public comment or question at this time?
First of all, thank you for the hard work all y'all did, whether it was SPSO, UCPD, or Santa Barbara Fire Department. You guys are very busy. I can see that. With that said, also CSD was very busy too with their event, which, as you pointed out, it was successful. It was a good draw. A lot of people, talked to a lot of people, and everybody said, like, yeah, this is awesome. So it was a combination of the enforcement in place and the entertainment. So I think it was, I'm not gonna, again, I can't call something like Del Toga successful, but I think the attempts to sort of diffuse a lot of the problems the attempt was successful. Could have been a lot worse, I think. One of the big issues is the people parking their cars in Goleta and taking Ubers in the town. And this is where I think that talking with Goleta, the city of Goleta, to enhance the parking restrictions would be a very useful thing. The other thing is, unfortunately, Costco and Target parking lots. Those are huge depository for those vehicles. So I think maybe something targeting those particular locations might be a little bit more enforcement on that. But in all, thank you for the hard work all of you did, all of you, including, we might be taking off after this to get dinner, but I will say, I know that the discussion of the Spring Festival is up next, and y'all did a great job. I think it was fantastic. The stage is very professional. Performers were great. The bands and stuff are fantastic. And yeah, it was a good time. And it was definitely one of those events to diffuse some of the stuff away from you guys over to you guys. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for those comments.
I did have one last question. You mentioned that restorative justice or suspending restorative justice was a success, and I was just wondering what metric you're using to determine.
So I was talking about that in terms of our media strategy, because we got a lot more attention from an interview requests as a result of that and curiosity around it. So we got to discuss in public settings like news press, independent news hawk, that's what I'm trying to, and in the Nexus channel, because it provoked a lot of conversation about why is this so significant that you're suspending restorative justice? And we were able to explain our position that restorative justice is for people who are local, cooperative, and compliant with us. And that participation in an event on Deltopia, like Deltopia, is inherently uncooperative and non-compliant to the idea of a community that Isla Vista is. It's not a rager. Like, we don't open the streets for ragers. And so that was our posture going into it, and we'll explain it a lot more because of that.
So do you anticipate it to have the same effect next year when it's not a novel decision?
No, because I think it'll actually shift a little bit. And next year it's going to be that they know that what is essentially zero tolerance enforcement. And so you're not going to get away with going to a 2-hour class carrying around a gallon of alcohol. You're going to have some sort of interface with the criminal justice system as a result. So it's part of our discouragement for people to come as part of that.
Are we doing comments?
Yes, we're back to, bring back the board for board comment. Any questions?
My comment piggybacks off Director Craig's. I'm glad you asked that question because what you told us when I asked you for Deltopia is that a metric of success would be less participation in the event, less people here. And this event is always an exercise of like what is in our control and what is not in our control. So it's probably pretty ambitious statement to make, and I'm not going to hold you to it and say that your strategy was all wrong because the event got bigger. But I do think that we should. It's almost like we need like a Steve Jobs level like media strategy consultant to come in and help us get us all together and coordinated, because I not to be Debbie Downer, but I don't view the media strategy as having been successful. I think that for many years, a lot of us in the community worked really hard to try to stop things like communicating proactively with students on other campuses about Deltopia, because it just makes them aware that Deltopia exists and we get more out of towners. UCSD understood that at the time when it happened, and reconsidered their strategy and decided not to do it anymore because they recognized that it was really the Streisand effect. Like when you tell people don't do something, they're like, oh, wait, hold on, let me come check that out. And I just think just especially right now, just everything going on in the world, we actually have a lot of good examples that we can draw on and try to on other college campuses and try to see like what works when we're trying to reduce and de-escalate large events like this that have come out of a lot of the protests on college campuses about Israel and Gaza. And in the situations from just doing a quick review, it seems like the areas where things are getting out of hand, it is you can get into a place where it's like a death spiral of like, you put more police in the situation and you do more enforcement, and that enforcement causes more people to want to come and be a part of the chaotic situation. So the situation gets less safe. So you need even more enforcement. And I think like that's the thing that I and I think others over the years have tried to stop, because it can be a never-ending death spiral. And I am concerned about the safety of the event. I'm also concerned about what is within our control and what is our response to it. And so that's like, I guess, the place that my comments come from, because I kind of think that, even just from hearing you talk, and I don't usually like to get in and nitpick the strategy of something, but like UCSB students are not reading Independent and News Hawk. Like that is a media strategy for the broader community. I read all those articles, but like the people that we are trying to reach, I don't even know if I necessarily think going to Gaucho FYI and finger wagging at them about the impact is a good strategy either. I think we have to think more broadly about how do we give people a positive outlook where they can have fun, where they can hang out with their friends, where they can consume alcohol if they want to, in a safer environment. And that's kind of the original mission of the Spring Festival. I'm glad to hear you feel that it was successful, and we'll talk about that in the next item. But I think that's my main takeaway from that is that if we continue down a path that is escalation in one place without having that positive outlet, I'm really concerned about what next year leads, and about how we may be inadvertently contributing to that death spiral.
So for many years, we had this, it was the Keep It Local campaign. And I think that that kind of messaging really infused itself in the campus and the culture of the campus. Everyone kind of, students, I felt like really, and a lot of the people here who were students during that time, maybe you can comment, but that Keep It Local, it created a sense of personal responsibility. I'm not going to invite my friends. I value Isla Vista. I want to keep it safe, keep it local. And I don't know if we push that message as much this year. And by we, I mean the collective way, I mean UCSB, everyone. And so I think that there's some value of thinking about how can we message how we care about this community and how that outsiders aren't welcome. And everyone needs to adopt it, right? So I think maybe the point of a coordinated media strategy might be kind of grabbing hold of one of those messages. Yeah, that's just what I just think that was a value for many years.
I think the last comment that I had was just that, like, when we're looking, I'm always going to bring this up, but when we're looking to increase police presence in our community, I really want to see that coupled with means by which to decrease police brutality events and intimidation events. I personally have female friends who had uncomfortable interactions with police this Delta, and I think any interaction with a police officer can be uncomfortable, so maybe that's part of it. But I think that in the past, I felt that you brushed off some of these questions. And I don't know that there are a ton of things we can do, but I would like to see, especially as we continue to increase police presence and look forward to next year, the sheriff's office and whatever partners you bring into this situation, come up with some sort of plan to decrease the potential of those, because I don't see that issue being adequately addressed in the approach that you have to this event currently.
I also want to make another comment that I forgot earlier. I was so horrified when you said that you came into Ivy at like 5 and we're seeing people party around 6, and by 10 it was the first overdose. And it's just and I remember when you had first mentioned that, I just couldn't believe that people are drinking so early. It's just so anathema to where I'm at in my life, but whatever. I just can't even imagine it. And I asked people who were students and student leadership, why are people drinking so early? And the response that I got back is that it was a reaction to the changes in the ordinance. And I was thinking, what changes in the ordinance would have made people drink early? I still don't understand. And so what? Did they have to stop early?
But 6 p.m. has been the deadline.
But 6 p.m. has
20
been,
years.
yeah, but 6 p.m. has been the deadline.
But I mean,
forever.
this is kind of my point. And
Yeah.
it's again, not to pick too hard on it, but when you go around in your media campaign, there's going to be a lot of enforcement. People, that's what they hear. They don't hear the details about the paid parties. And there were so many, at least I had conversations with a half dozen students where I had to correct the record and explain to them, no, this is all about paid parties and super huge, large parties that are getting out of control. But I do not feel that it was, I mean, they were satisfied when I explained that to them. I mean, I had one student that was so mad at the supervisor's office, and then he was mad at me when I told him that we supported it. Which it's fine. People can have different opinions, but I did not have an idea and thought that this was something that was way more draconian. So, I mean, people hear enforcement. They don't hear what it is. Mm-hmm. So I got that feedback from people too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it just wraps up what you were talking about. I think the need to have a media strategy that is as robust as a law enforcement strategy is necessary. And then we need to bring in the various entities that touch the different communities. So, and I think maybe that needs to be, it's not just about door hangers. It's not just about week before press, but it's more of maybe a month or 2 month strategy that we're putting in place ahead of the event. And I think there's enough expertise between the county and IVCSD and others that I think that we could And others in the university.
And I'll just even say that I said the word media, but I think a lot of the stuff that we do, even with the door hangers, is purposefully done not with the media. Because,
yeah, yeah.
because you have different results when you do one-to-one interaction with people
Yeah.
than you can
Yeah.
necessarily on social media, traditional.
Yeah.
So it's almost like an organizing strategy that we do,
Totally.
you know?
It's just, it's not one component.
Yeah.
It's how we tell the story, and it's a lot of different
Or
components.
how we don't tell the story, because a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
of this stuff,
Yeah.
when you see like quotes in the student newspaper about how like Deltopia is, for college students, the place to be, which is something that you were quoted as saying. I understand that you are not saying that, celebrating it at all. But for students that are reading it, especially maybe people from out of town, it really looks like you're hyping this thing up for next year, and it can have the opposite effect of intent.
So my last comment, I just want to thank you for all your work. You put so much effort and so much time, starting last summer with organizing this group of looking at the different ordinances and the changing and getting it through the Board of Supervisors. So I just want to thank you for all your dedication. Thank you.
I will echo that, thanks. I know, $112,000 of overtime, but I can't even imagine how many individual people that is that are giving up time out of their lives, spending time away from their family, their kids, to be here and respond to something. So I really appreciate the work of all you and your team. I appreciate you engage and try to collect this feedback, even if we have differing views. But I think that that's always, something that I've appreciated. So.
There's a public comment. All right, to the public comment on Zoom, you should please share your name and speak.
It's Ash. Hi.
Hi.
So yeah, I agree that the keep it local was effective like 10 years ago. I think anyway, it was somewhat effective. So perhaps we should try that again. Um, I I also think it's worth thinking about like how different types of enforcement affect behavior in ways that might be uh you know making things worse and less safe. Like for example, I've seen parties where people will take a bunch of shots and they'll say like we're not allowed to have open containers, so we need to take like 4 shots right now before we walk outside, as opposed to like being allowed to walk outside with a can of beer. Or like the fact that it started so early does feel like it was a response to the like 6 p.m. enforcement and people hearing that there'd be more enforcement. I don't have all the answers, but I think that's important to think about. Thank you to those in law and medical who are, organizing, getting medical help for everyone suffering from alcohol poisoning. I think that's pretty much the most important thing to focus on, are when people are being actively harmed, and it seems like the biggest thing is the alcohol poisoning, or the most people were affected by alcohol poisoning that had serious harm going on. And I wonder, what, to some extent we can't control, like if people are going to drink more than they can safely, and their bodies can safely process, in that amount of time. But that's such a big deal for this community. And there's been like so much education and resources around like Narcan, but I heard that there wasn't actually any opioid overdoses that anyone was aware of. So maybe there were,
No
but
comment.
in which Narcan we didn't know about it. But what do we do for the alcohol poisoning?
Dang, I agree.
Anyway, thanks for everyone working on this, trying to care for a community. Check.
I think that the fact that we didn't have anyone die is something that we can at least say we improved upon from last year. Even if there were deployments, that's why we were getting it out there. We were getting the Narcan out there so that it could be used if it needed. I only wish that we had more of it. And I think it sounds like at Ivy Safe, that was a topic of discussion, was how to get money to get more of it or get more of that in hand.
We have a ton in the office right now.
That is really cool because I know I ran out probably within like 15 minutes of canvassing people, and just about everyone that I talked to was really grateful for it. I even talked to one long-term resident who at first was like, why do I need this? I'm not going to be partying during Deltopia. And as we talked more, she realized, actually, yeah, I do want this, because what if my neighbor, what if it's just someone that I happen to see on the street? It's kind of it's like a fire extinguisher. You want to have it just in case you need it. So I think that is an effort that should be continued, supported, and scaled. And I appreciate the supervisor's office for initiating it.
All right. I'll conclude this item, but thank you, Lieutenant, for your report. Thank you for the information, and thank you for being here to have a dialogue with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now move on to our third item, 4.3, the Spring Festival 2024 debrief.
Mine's at 50 now, so I'm we'll forget.
Should I stand here too?
Sure.
I can go up
We
there.
need a dais, huh? We need a dais?
Or like a,
We used to
is
have.
that what
like-
this is,
What
like a
happened?
podium?
I don't know.
You got stolen.
Yeah, maybe. But in the early days, we had a podium.
Oh, yeah?
Thank you.
Stand in the corner because he had like a
Oh, yeah.
In general, we do need a podium though. That is one thing that we don't have.
Oh, I thought we had it.
It's gone. Yeah.
A lot of things
You're doing
disappear.
like a project over in the corner right now. Like, just kept looking over and you just like.
What are you cleaning?
Oh, there was a piece of duct tape here. And
Oh.
when you pull it off, it's even worse underneath it.
Oh,
Are we breaking?
yum.
No.
We have
We're
some
just
move on
talking.
to.
Yeah.
We're
But
just
I'm gonna pay attention.
sharing
to
all this for the world to
It's
see.
You just let me know when you're ready. Okay.
You're ready.
All right, Spring Fest. We've got some teasers from the last presentation, but I'm excited to give you a nice review. Kirsten, I know you've heard this already once, but
That's
there's
okay.
a couple more sections at the
Pretty.
end that I didn't share yet, so I'm excited. All right, next slide. So we'll talk about the goals that we had for the event, the overall structure, the partners that we worked with, sponsorships that we received, marketing, day of, medical support impact, and then new additions are the budget review, partner feedback, looking ahead, and then I do want to open it up for a discussion at the end. So I'll keep a good pace. So our goals, we wanted a safe, fun, healthy community of entertainment. We wanted to build our community for Isla Vista, promoting all of our art and culture. We wanted to celebrate all of the positive aspects we have of our community. We wanted to support local businesses in Isla Vista, give us the ability to have control of our own narrative and image. And last but not least, we wanted a local event under the theme of keep it safe, keep it local. So structure, first thing that we did was safety. So preventative education. We had the Party Safety for All event, which was a pretty good success. We partnered with everyone from Gaucho Recovery, EBPLA, Life the Party, IB Foot Patrol, our Interpersonal Violence Investigator, SSPs. Essentially, each of these groups prepared some points about party safety and they shared them with students. We did get good media attention on this as well. And there was a lot of like handouts. I think EBPLA office had goodie bags with Narcan and a bunch of things in it. So we did our best to try and get the word out. We even had a video from Henry kind of talking about a local resident's perspective from Deltopia and his advice on keeping your neighbors happy in this time. With the marketing of, learn how to be a good friend, ally, and neighbor during the chaotic weekend at Deltopia.
It's just the slow.
It's all right. It's the
Yeah.
suspense between the slides. Keeps us on
I'll
our
ask
toes.
a question while we're waiting for it to load. The video, that's really cool. I didn't know that we did that. Did we share that on social media, or where did it?
We shared a summary of points
Mhm.
with people. I think we put them on our website. The video actually was, we had some media attention. We had, I think IVCSD come out and interview some students. Yeah, it's great. And then they have support. So this was all of the safety efforts that we had at our event. We had a very robust security team. We had 3 EMTs on site. UCIV was on site with water, snacks, Narcan. We had a SSP station with waters and snacks. We also just had in addition to those 2 water stations, we had another just water station. As you already know, we put 36 bathrooms around Isla Vista with the big central location in the community center parking lot, but then also on Sabado and Camino Corto, and then the other Sabado, other corner. We also put water stations next to every bathroom station with a total of over 5,000 cans of water. We did cans instead of plastic water bottles this year, trying it out. In addition, I made an interactive resource map, and that was posted on every single block to direct community to the resources. So in addition to blaring signs on every block that said EMT, tacos, bathrooms, water, like physically pointing people where to go, every single one of those had a QR code, and if you scanned it, you could actually get directions to bathrooms and water, which is huge for people who are intoxicated. Consistent communication between safety resources and event staff. So we all had walkie-talkies. We knew what was going on. And also we had, law enforcement communicating with us throughout the day to make sure we were in the loop of what was going on. Next part was arts and culture, community building. So we featured 4 local artists live painting. They were working on campuses. In addition, they were working on permanent displays for the Isla Vista Beautiful program that will be put up on the trash cans on Part All. We had 2 interactive community paintings where people were just coming and painting. There were 30 canvases that attendees actually took and painted on. I was skeptical of this, and it actually was a huge success. A lot of people just wanted to sit and hang out and paint. And in addition, we also had body paint as an interactive art experience. So people wanted their face painted on top of it. That wasn't free, but if they wanted it, they could have it. In addition, we wanted to celebrate our amazing community. So as y'all know, we did a Battle of the Bands, American Idol, whatever you want to call it, audition. And we picked 4 local bands, 3 DJs and 1 rapper, and they were all a huge hit. They each brought in their own crowd of fans, in addition to the flow of traffic that we had. We also had Edible Campus program doing seed bombs, an ice cream booth from our sponsors at Pharmacy, and then Thriftopia also brought in a tooth gem vendor, which sold out before the end of the event. A lot of people wanted tooth gems. Yeah, bedazzles on your teeth. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm shocked.
You didn't participate?
I didn't, I missed that. You both.
In addition, we had 4 fully funded taco vendors. Each of these vendors had $7,000 each to make as many tacos as they can with a vegetarian and a meat option. And then all of our snacks and water were all purchased through the IV Food Co-op. So normally we get them through Costco and whatnot, but this year we wanted to really keep it local and support our local businesses. And it was more expensive, but I think it was worth it by far. And then also keep it local. We did really try with this keep it safe, keep it local marketing initiatives. Obviously, we save everything for the week of Deltopia because we don't want to draw too much attention, but we did a series of reels, TikToks, Instagram posts, just about every trend that we could hop on to try and engage with people in a way that they would understand. We did. And then in addition, just having those local safety stations and UCIV on our event as well. And yeah, the other thing I had on there was just a beacon of hope. I've realized throughout the event that this really did become like a beacon of hope for people. They knew that if they needed help in any way, whether it would be water or food or an EMT, like they all knew where to go, which was really cool to see on the day of. 19 partners. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but a lot of people were involved in this. I wish it was 20 just for my own like number rounding it, but yeah, it was really great that so many people were ready to get involved and help out with this.
You can round 19 to 20.
Yeah, it's 20.
It's legit.
It's 20. It's 20.
We're a partner.
Yeah, exactly. We're the last
board.
piece. We're the last piece. Sponsorships. We had 1,000.
You should ask her. They've got a big pot of money.
I know, and I'm reaching out to them for October too.
Awesome.
Because if you're interested, yeah.
What'd you say?
Could I ask you a question about the
Yeah.
TikTok? Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just saying they have a big pot of money
Sorry.
as a part of their license for Isla Vista
Yeah.
nonprofits and efforts.
What were you gonna say?
On the TikToks, is there a way that you can see who views the TikToks if they're, yeah?
We
I
can
just
share
wondered.
data on that. Yeah, not right now, but I
No,
can
no,
pull
I
that.
just was curious because I think of, I don't know, I love TikTok, but I just wonder like how many people from outside of Isla Vista
See them.
see them and then
Yeah.
that becomes an attraction as opposed to a deterrent. That's what I was thinking.
Definitely. I will say the reels that we did do were very much like, you can kind of see it right there. It's like, keep it local, Deltopias for Isla Vistans. And
Yeah.
like where the bathrooms are and like what to pack in your Deltopia safe bag, which is like Narcan and water. And I think she had lip gloss. And then our event. So like, while I could see how that might be a draw for people, it's like the local government's, output. I don't. Local artists did all of our little graphics, and so it was really great. And I do think that's a very good strategy that I want to continue to do for all of our festivals and stuff. Is just one, giving that artist, the platform, and then two, like it's always incredible and it's always a huge hit. So I'm really great that it's great that you liked it. All right, let's talk about the day of. So I saw people using the bathroom starting at 8 a.m. and Bagel Cafe was packed. People were coming across the street and it was consistent throughout the entire day. A good thing is that I didn't see lines at our bathroom. So it was really good that we had so many in one place because people weren't waiting long to go to the bathroom. Lines for tacos were long starting at 12:30. So people were lining up before the event even started to get their free tacos. And it continued throughout the end of the day until 6 p.m. I had to tell Rogers, you need to stop making people talk. Not allowed. Tell him to go home. But you can see the line in these two pictures. It was like that the entire event. And so I know that there were over 5,000 people served just because that's what Rogers Tacos told me. But it's a very generous number. I know that was one line of people with tacos and all 4 of them were packed. So like I got mixed reviews, but I do know that that $7,000 that I gave everyone was exactly the amount of food that they needed. And a couple of them even went and got more food from their restaurant that could bring it back. So a lot of people were served. 5,000 is a very generous number. In addition, let's talk about UCIV and SSPs. They completely ran out of all their snacks in the time of the event. UCIV did start before of our event, so keep that in mind, but completely out of resources by the time that I left. I think SSPs had water that they still had for the rest of the day that they were there, but yeah. And so yeah, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but we learned very quickly that our techniques were successful and that people knew that this was the place to come if they needed any sort of medical support or food or anything, or even just to rest. I will say I saw a lot of people taking a little nap in the sun. It was a comfy place, but the good thing is that if anything were to happen, we had a bunch of medical EMTs on site. So I was a little concerned at first, but everyone woke up and was fine. So it's great. Just a little cat nap. Let's talk about our EMT stats. So over 50 patients were served. 3 patients needed 911 transport out of that 50. Other requests for 911 transport were also made, but the ambulances were at the tent so fast because the location was right on the corner where they were staying that it was kind of hard to document. So there could have been more, but that's how much they wrote down. There was a few requests where our security team were actually pulling our EMTs off of our event site to help things nearby, which I found very interesting. And you know, some of the more unfortunate things, people were urinating on their chairs, vomiting on things, and they tended to over 100 people with 58, reported that they served 58 patients in their tent. Oh, this is the county. So you got these stats from the sheriff's report, but it's just kind of important for us to really recognize that we saw 50 patients when they were seeing 100. So we're really able to take some of the load off of them, which I think is a huge success coming out of this event. And yeah, those 15 were the numbers we already touched on. So yeah, we were really able to have a big impact with our medical support team. And I think we'll talk about this more when we think about looking ahead, but even when I talked to the EMTs on the day of, we could have very easily doubled the amount of people that we had there. We had a lot more people at this event than we were originally expecting and that we have had in years past. So it was good for us to know. All right, let's talk about money. I know these numbers are kind of small on the screen, so I'm gonna walk up here so I can see them a little better. So our top spending categories were trash, bathrooms, food, local entertainment, and then the art installation. So number one most expensive thing was the food. We spent $28,000 on the food. Next thing is going to be the trash and bathrooms. Most of that's the bathrooms going all over DP. That was about $7,000. The next most expensive thing being the art installation. So that's that, you know, the big tent thing and the banners and everything that you saw were really expensive. But I do think it helped just like boost our credibility for people walking by and drew people in from the street. Like I said, we did spend more on snacks and water than we did in years past, coming in at about over $3,000. We did save by using a local production company for our needs. So it was a production company actually rooted in Isla Vista. They store everything in their living room. And they were incredibly professional and handled the event very, very well. And I would love to work with them again, but we did save and we still paid them more than they were asking for. So when I say that we saved compared to using something in like Goleta or Santa Barbara, I still about doubled what they had originally gave me as a price because I knew what it was going to take for them to be there. That makes sense. We treated them well. That's what I want to say. We received a sponsorship from Farm.
Can I ask a question on
Yeah.
the permits? What is TFF food permitting for food vendors? What is TFF?
That's the county public health department. So they come and actually do an inspection an hour before the event. And so you need to pay for like an event organizer fee and then a fee per booth. And anytime I work with food vendors, I tell them I will cover the fee as part of like being on an event. If you know, there's a lot of paperwork and permitting things that they need to get together. Yeah, it's expensive though. Okay, partner feedback. There's a lot on here, so I'm not going to go through everything. I'll just kind of give you like a high level from each. Production company said we really need some more trash cans. We had a lot on site, but we're probably going to double. We're cleaning the trash out every like 5 minutes. And also we want to implement bi-weekly planning meetings starting about 2 months before with all of the different organizations involved, which I think is really great. DJ, they wanted more speakers and subs and everything, like, you know, as a student, they wanted to be nice and loud. And they also recommended longer DJ sets throughout the event. So that is something to consider if we were to maybe space it out a little bit more, having like a whole DJ section with music continuously. Art facilitation, like I said, there was more people than expected, which was also shocking for the artists who were live painting and trying to interact and pass out things. So I need to implement more structured breaks and check-ins with these vendors because it's a 6-hour event. That's a long time to make sure, we need to make sure that our vendors have food, that they're taking breaks, that they're getting water and not just, entertaining the entire time. Also having a stage for the artists because they were getting bumped into when there was music in that area and people are intoxicated. So food vendors, they thought that the amount of food vendors was very necessary. One of the vendors said that it was about a 30-minute wait time throughout the event. Compensation felt right for most of them, so that was really good to hear. For our Thriftopia facilitator, she was saying that maybe a more official water station, we had a table and we're just handing out water, would be helpful with like some labeling. And really to maybe reevaluate the layout because there were so many people in such a small space. We need to think about that for next year. Auditions were a big hit and also having something on hand so people aren't just throwing up everywhere and having like bags or something that we give our staff, which is just an unfortunate truth. Okay, looking ahead. So number one, you hear this, from the sheriffs already, but this might be a new perspective on my end. Obviously we need more medical support. That seems to be something that is continuously echoed. I'm throwing out there, maybe we could turn the community center into a mini hospital and coordinate some details with the EMS station. And I also, like I said, recommend doubling the amount of EMTs that we just have on our event. But I mean, thinking that they're operating out of a tent across from the sheriff's office when we have this big empty building that we could put, beds or cots or something in and have doctors on site. I just feel like that's an opportunity for us to collaborate with what's already happening if we can. Number two, spreading out the layout because there was a lot more people than expected. Something that I've seen in other festivals is when you have things spread out, it's not so crowded. People can move around a little bit better. And I think that we're getting to the point where we might need to do that. Like I said, more water in trash bins. And then yeah, I'm gonna skip the parking options for a second, we'll come back to that, but also the more street closures, a lot of feedback that I got from some of our partners and even just noticing, like closing off the entire loop instead of potentially just the area that it was, because a lot of people were crossing the street and there's cars coming by and like there's bathrooms and then there's our event. So, working with, the county and other agencies to see like how much we can block off at least of the loop area, because it was getting really unsafe. And then explore parking options. So something that I've been doing since this event is just kind of looking to other communities. While obviously Deltopia is a very novel thing for us and festivals in general, it isn't something that's a new phenomenon. I've learned there's a ton of research out there about local government involvement in community festivals and how to, mitigate things like parking, tourism, etc. And so I think, I would personally like to spend more time investigating what other communities are doing and, hearing that comment that Tesla said like, oh, like they felt like this was Coachella. Well, if they're feeling that way, then I think we need to look at the bigger picture of like what we can do to try and create a structure or a model or something with parking and travel and everything that will prepare us for something like this. So all I'm saying is I think I have some more research to do, but I would like to give you a research-backed idea or plan based on what other communities have done in the past. Because I'm seeing that it is quite common. There's a bunch out there. So that's what parking options means. And now I open it up for discussion. I'd love to hear what you think, your thoughts, ideas, all the stuff. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that presentation. For the board and your questions.
No questions?
I just wanted to ask hopefully a short question. You mentioned expansion of street closure to all of EDM. Do you mean like up to say like Seville Road or up to like Anascoyo? Like I'm not sure if you can picture them. I have it up right now, that's why I can name it. But like, or do you mean like both veins fully vertical up?
I mean, in a perfect world, I would say like starting at part all, the whole like loop being closed off. But like this is my own opinion and just like things that I've noticed. So in a perfect world, I would say that. I think Seville alone would make a huge difference if we were able to do that. Just because that will at least block off the space in between like Little Acorn and like the community center.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just flock that way to food.
And so like you were seeing vehicle traffic like at the round part of the loop like that.
Quite a bit, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I don't see any other questions from our board, so I'll quickly go to the public. If there's any public comment or question at this time. Don't see any public, so I'll come back to the board for any board commentary and discussion and questions. Yes, Director Brand.
Well, first, congratulations. This was your first year organizing it with this way, whereas in the past we've relied on the contractors for a lot more of the legwork. And it was our most successful spring festival to date. So that I'm just really impressed with everything you're able to pull off, whether it was the medical side of things and increasing that, or just the water and the food. Jonathan and I were standing there watching just how people were absolutely stuck in those lines. And we were thinking they are stuck in those lines, drinking water and not getting more drunk, which is a huge, huge positive. So I know that was a little bit of the strategy. And I was just super impressed too with the quality of the artists that we have. We have such a talented art community, both musically and visually, which was really cool. And it just left me really with the thought that like we got to expand this and go even bigger. And I think that that is what you are recommending, and I think you're on the right path to think that. I even in some of the conversation with Lieutenant Tesla, he even brought up, or maybe it was you who asked him the question about AS program board and those events. And I think that that is an interesting collaboration to explore because they bring with them their own set of expertise and resources too. And in years past when we were kind of first starting this before COVID, there were some conversations that were had. So that I'm definitely super interested in that. I like the street closure ideas because it could just help grow the footprint. And while I think Lieutenant Tesla hears the Coachella comment and thinks about all the negative aspects of it, the positive aspect of it is that it's very clear from this presentation that what is happening outside of our event is not working well. And when I see that we only had 3 hospital calls out of the people that were in the park and at our event, that tells me that we have something that is a formula that's working, but it's safer. And so I am very supportive of us thinking about how we can expand this. I know with the street closure in 2019 and 2020, when we talked to the county about it, they wanted to have one of those access points open. So I would love the whole loop too, but I think it's a good thing to start thinking about that like now, especially hearing from Tesla that they are going to want to like really up staff on the law enforcement side. They're going to want to have law enforcement officers at whatever the barricades are for the areas where we close down. And I wouldn't want us to get told no because they had already decided what their law enforcement staffing plan was. I think it behooves us to think about that early and to, I think that even if we did the same thing next year that we did this year, I think it would be even bigger because it's clear that like this was a positive experience for people. The reputation of the event is going to continue to grow and get even better and better. So I think it's almost like we have to grow the footprint so that we can have space for all the people that will be there.
On the positive side, I wanted just to say that all the work that you did, amazing. You have so much creativity, and I just love all the different stations that you had set up. I didn't see the teeth bejeweling, but the different art and the body paint and everything. Next year I'll get there. I think it's just amazing to see when Jonathan, under kind of your leadership, when you give staff the room to grow, they create amazing things. And it's really testament to you and the team that you put together. That was such a great event in so many ways. So what is the but? So I guess for me, the but is I really worry that this event becomes so big that it becomes a draw. The Coachella comment resonates, right? I don't think we want that. I don't think we want to be drawing people from LA, San Francisco, San Luis Obispo to Isla Vista. I wish maybe there are greater minds that could think of how can we limit it to people that live here. So yes, it does need to be, I think just there is a lot of pent up demand for it, and to make it bigger would be great. But what I really hope is that we're not creating an event that's going to attract a lot of people that attracts a lot of problems. You know, the difference between I think some cities that have events is that they're cities, right? IV is in a city, and this is not a sponsored event, Deltopia in general. And so I think I hope that we can see that there's a balance to strike between engaging the community in a way that is positive, but not drawing in people out of the community. So I hope we can find that balance. I'm not sure if we can, but I hope that can be something that kind of guides us.
Yes, Director Schultz.
I can't say how happy I am with how this particular part of the day played out. Like, this was insanely well put together. Like, even when I was standing outside, I was watching it. All of it was coordinated. All of the lines were still kept together. I really, really like the idea of turning the community center into some sort of triage center for medical emergencies. I think that would take a lot of the strain off of the general area, but this is really, really good. And it even themed with the Halloween stuff that you did earlier in the year to sort of make it very clear that there is a safe space during events like that, which I think is a really, really big thing for a lot of people that are there. Even if you're participating, still having a safe space that you know that you could get help at or food at or water at is paramount if you can't control it.
I had a question to Kirsten's point. We saw some of the advertising around safety stuff. What was the advertising around the Spring Festival looking like?
What we put out the week
Yeah,
of?
were we to what degree were we promoting this to the community?
So a lot of our promotion was around the safety. The one thing that wasn't around safety that we were promoting is probably the fact that we were having artists and the bands. That was also a big thing that we were promoting. We did band spotlights and artist spotlights. But other than that, it was we did the punching trend where it was keep it safe, keep literally giving out safety tips in a funny way. And then also having like I said, the what's in my bag on Deltopia, and it was an interactive map. That was a big thing that we were pushing, was the map.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we created a huge buzz around the actual wow factor of it. And another thing of that is we very strategically only started on Monday of the week of. I'm sure people might have heard it, knew something was happening because we had the auditions that were very public. But yeah, it was pretty limited. And the door hangers going on at home doors.
Yeah, so I guess and that's one thing, I do think Deltopia as a larger event is becoming a bigger draw, but I don't necessarily share your concern that this is what's drawing people. And I think that the draw that this event has is day of, and it is kind of that original intention of getting people away from Deltopia into these safer spaces. Just because I had friends that I was reminding that this was a thing, and this was something that was going on in the community. Even though we're from here, I love the CSD Instagram, and I'm looking at everything you guys do, but I don't think that a lot of other people from outside our community are.
I agree.
And let me clarify, I wasn't suggesting that this was a draw. I'm suggesting if we want to continue to expand it and make it bigger, that we preserve that balance of that it's for this community. It's not a draw to people outside of the community.
And another thing I just want to throw out there, these other festivals that do have the control to have tickets, they also have the control to have a cap.
Yeah.
Which is also something that I'm just gonna throw out, just for us to start thinking about, the more that we can, control the flow of how to get access to things, the more we can cap it, potentially. You know, like I said, research is needed.
Yeah, in fact, it made me think when you were talking about expanding, the year before last, we had the first event and we had it right out here. It was a great footprint, but we didn't have the people. And now it seems like what you're creating, it's like, it could be a really nice synergy between both locations. And I think that year we also had fencing, right?
A
Did
lot
we
of
have
fencing.
a lot of
around the event,
fencing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And no one came until the fencing was removed.
I know, that
Yeah.
was funny. That was a deterrent to people
Yeah.
attending.
And we did see a lot of people at this lawn. Like they would take picnic blankets from
Mhm.
our event
Mhm,
and go and lay on this lawn because nothing was happening.
mhm.
I saw someone in a tree, like back there. You know, we're capitalizing on this space. So, you know, thinking about how we can use what people are already doing and like working around that.
I will just, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I also think it's like worth taking into account, like, if we really are expecting an increase in attendees that Lieutenant Tesla like thinks that we are, like, I think it's worth like, you know, understanding how much space people take and how that could potentially impact like our bands and our vendors and our artists. And like, you know, you're saying like artists were getting bumped into even with the crowd that we had this year, and I don't want it to become an event that like is then negatively impacting, especially like our partners in a way that they don't want to participate in these events again.
I will make my pitch to you that I made to Lieutenant Tesla about the need for like a little bit of strategic brand audit or consulting going on, because I mean, it seems to me that from the stats he shared, most of the people that are from out of town aren't even affiliated with another university. These are people that are coming to our community not with good intentions in mind. They're coming here not knowing anybody. They're coming here because they want the crazy spring break chaos experience. And the sheriff's office is giving them exactly what they want, if through the status quo. That to me is the brand aspect. And I think that even in an environment where we say like 10 times the size, footprint, whatever you want to call it, of what we're doing, I just find it hard to see it having that same effect and drawing the same type of people in. You know, like there's not, to the best of my knowledge, IVCSD does extravaganza. There is a lot more of a level of control. And so I don't think that we're going to get there overnight, but I really view that as something that is kind of like the long-term goal here. And maybe we'll wake up one day, years from now, and people won't even remember what Deltopia is because whatever we've done has grown and supplanted it. I would see that as a huge success. And it would allow us to have more control over the things that are now totally out of our control. And not even just ours, but out of law enforcement's control too. Like they don't control the fact that all those people see the craziness and want to come, you know. I'm saying this to you, but I'm saying this to everybody.
Yeah, I don't hear what you're saying, yeah.
So some of my comments are going to be kind of like spinning thoughts, but as we heard about the partnership possibility with AS, or not a partnership possibility, but it's a partnership thought that some of us are having. I keep coming back to it, and I'm on the AS program board webpage, and so they have concerts is the big word you see, and then it says extravaganza, and then we have their Halloween event, then there's a welcome back event, and then there's other smaller things, and there's not really a mention of the what was temporary. I think it was IVCSD's spring festival or a spring concert. I'm not sure what the term was, but
Delirium.
it was also called Delirium. Here we have Delirium as the Halloween concert, but my point is
the warm up. Sorry,
the warm up. You're
My
right.
bad.
That is it. To me, extravaganza was always this. You know, we're not talking AS here, but maybe they're listening. Extravaganza was always a cool event. That's where I saw Snoop Dogg for free. That's where I saw Kendrick Lamar for free, and then other people who I would have paid to see, but also saw for free. And that event, I'm sure, has, you know, problems and stress, but I've never really understood why Extravaganza was its place in the quarter late, you know, kind of competing with things. The beginning of spring quarter is, in my memory, the origin of Flowtopia and Beltopia. Other universities like Cal Poly, they have their big Cesar Chavez Friday party. And our school has this thing, Beltopia. I'm always kind of wondering, why don't we, not always, I'm now wondering, why don't we have a better partnership with AS on either fill up their daylight with something that's a little bit more organized. I'm really proud of our event, but I know that we're still a small district, and we continue to make more with a limited capacity. And I look at the university as somebody who is our partner, but also has a much larger strength capacity than we have. They also have much larger land footprints to make use of than we have. We're borrowing with our neighbors 2 tiny parks. They're
Are you
great parks.
suggesting that we go to Harding Stadium? What do you suggest?
My suggestion would be, I don't know what the origin of Extravaganza is. I'm on the webpage. I can see it began in 1979, but I don't think it's tied to a specific day or a specific month or week for any reason. We know that we have this dangerous event of Deltopia. We know that drawing people away with a fun and safe outlet is very effective. If only we could have, you know, whoever runs the AS program board, like, hear my plea, that you would be a really great partner with us to have another concert, or we can mutual aid funds like the way law enforcement does to try and take people away. And I know it's a little bit exclusionary to people who are not enrolled at UCSB, for our city college residents and other people who live in Isla Vista. I think there's a way that we can handle that and include those true locals, and to use the word exclude people who are from out of town and just don't need to be here that weekend. There's a lot of loud parties during spring quarter, I get it, but this one always becomes the big problem. And Extravaganza, I don't think, has a problematic history. I don't think any terrible things have happened. Maybe I need to do my research.
Just 1 year.
Just 1 year?
When it was at night, it was great.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Was that at Stork? Was that?
That was
the
at
one that was
night?
at Stork?
That was at Harder.
It
It was
was at
before we went
Harder?
to
that was
school.
before we attended, but
And Drake was
yes,
Yeah.
I'll tell my comments.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
But that's just,
This is crazy.
I know, that's the quality of.
that was when he was not big also.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
like 2009, 2008. But anyways, I don't know. That's just an idea. I think you did an excellent job. To say what Kirsten said again, I'm really thankful that you have been given this extra space to be creative, to make use of a budget. You didn't just like say, let's spend more. You set a limit on yourself and then came under that limit. I'm very impressed with that. You took a lot on, and more people are proud of you than they were before. That's a huge success. Also, the interactive map, I heard about that just through like randomness and was texting Jonathan, like, what is this real? Like, do we actually own this? And he was like, yeah, like this is like, we didn't really like advertise this heavily, like part of that media strategy, but in general, I think that's great. And that's really cool safety feature for any day of the year in Isla Vista. So kudos to that, because none of us thought about that here. None of us spitballed that idea. You came up with it, and that's excellent. I'll wrap up my comments, and I'm thankful for you being one of our employees and dedicating so much time to this.
Thank you. And I completely agree. I think we're kind of have a missed opportunity here with AS, and my wheels are spinning. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yes.
I was, just to kind of piggyback on what you said, what I'm hearing kind of consistently from when we had our sheriff presentation and this presentation is the need to step it up one level and interact with people at more of a coordinating kind of a group of people, to talk more strategically about some of these events and how we can be partnering a little bit closer, and on the messaging, on the social media, on the media in general, but also just the coordination of events, the timing of different events. And I think that's something really, Jonathan, that's something that you can do, is using your background and your experience being on the AS, because the politics, is to really try and understand how we can bring those entities to work with the IVCSD and in more coordination. Yeah. If we all kind of see the same goals, if we could try and rally around some similar goals, I think that might be really helpful.
Start early.
Yeah, we'll have to start early.
Dr.
This
Brandt.
guy wants to speak.
Oh, yes, and I want a second starting early. I just want to say what you just said, Marcos, I think is really important. Like, really important. That there is no reason why the timing of events that they have to be the way that they are.
Right.
And I will share the history that Jonathan and I went with Lucidity and spoke to the program board, pitched them on being involved in iteration. I don't even call it 1.0 because it never came to fruition because the pandemic stopped everything from happening, but the very first iteration. And it's definitely not an easy, it was not an easy sell at the time. That doesn't mean that we should give up, and all of the people that were involved in it at the time are no longer.
Right.
The reason that they were receiving this funding from the university for events, whether it's Halloween or whether it's the Deltopia event, is for the purpose of reducing the impact of what happens in IB during Halloween or during Deltopia. And it's tricky. I almost feel like when you were saying that, like we need like a Deltopia retreat or something like that.
Yeah.
To try
Totally.
to get everyone on the same page,
Yeah.
because even when Jonathan and I have been in many of those Zoom coordinating meetings, and I think we always felt like they were like not super helpful forums for us to be able to talk strategically. It was more like, we made up our mind, here's what we're gonna do, just so you know, FYI, here's the up-to-date information. And we would go into those meetings thinking, thoughts like what I shared with Lieutenant Tesla today of like, the thing that you're doing is not going to be helpful. It's going to make things worse. So at least that's just always been my feeling. So I don't know, maybe there is a Deltopia retreat or large events retreat with a facilitator or something that we can.
I like that. And I also think, Maya, it's really because of your work on the Spring Festival the last 2 years that IVCSD now, I think people see IVCSD has a significant contribution to make into what can be done differently and not just going with the status quo of law enforcement first. And I think that's something that you should take a lot of pride in, because it's really due to a lot of your work that now I think IVCSD has something very meaningful as an alternative to offer. And that could be part of this discussion.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like for, a united plan. So I love the idea of a retreat because I have a lot that I could show y'all to we could create like a plan to then share and get feedback on, like a united front.
100%,
almost.
yeah. Looks like a new retreat's in order.
No, I think it's a good.
And when I say that, I don't mean just us.
Yeah, no.
We should
no.
probably have like 1 or 2 reps. But
Yeah, totally,
Right.
totally. Maybe it's like the Ivy Safe group or something. Yeah.
So,
I mean, our Ivy Safe representatives.
yeah.
that's okay.
Didn't mean to inadvertently touch you. Yeah, sheriff, university, high level.
All right. Well, thank you for your presentation. Is that enough discussion?
This is great. Yeah, thank you. I know you have to be here longer, so
Okay.
I'm good. Thanks.
Thank you so much. We will now move on to item 4.4, the Ivy State Spring Meeting Report out.
We just did it, the last two items.
Oh, good.
There's not much else to say, I think, from the Ivy Safe. This is essentially what happened at that meeting too, but this is just part of our process, so we're sticking to it. The only thing I'll add is we did have the discussion on bluff and balcony safety and a presentation from county planning on that. And the big takeaway, at least for me from that presentation, was that the county planning department will be able to share with us the list of property owners who have pulled permits to put up higher fences so that we can publish that list for public consumption.
So we could do, this is who has, and then by subtraction and addition, we can figure out,
This is,
we can name and shame.
yeah. Also, interestingly, this is the first Ivy Safe meeting a property owner didn't come to.
Mhm.
They did not attend.
No property owners came to.
And they're the ones that requested the
Yeah.
bluff safety
I
issue
know.
on the agenda.
And normally we have like 2 or 3.
A couple, yeah.
Director Ray.
But a question related to bluff safety that has arisen in my mind, I think, since the IVC meeting happened. I'm wondering if you have any updates on any complaints that you're aware of that have been filed with property owners and how that plays or filed with the county building department.
I don't know about any specific ones. I just know that that's something the second district office is promoting more now. There's a form that people can submit to for complaints. And if their complaint triggers the need to make a repair and that repair needs a permit, then that permit requires them to put up a fence, the higher fence. So that is new, yeah, from IVC. We're gonna work with them to promote that. So. Oh, yeah, we didn't get to the road safety and the peer-to-peer program for neighborhood concerns because Deltopia took pretty much the whole meeting, but it was a week or so after, so I think that was naturally gonna happen.
Just want to say thank you to our ID Safe reps for hanging in there on the meeting before Deltopia is always like the most fireworks, and I appreciate this information that you're able to bring us. I realize we're doing the report out now, but I think that we already had some, or we had just some reports during committee reports from them. So maybe thanks for representing us well.
And I'll just add, these meetings are probably, I've never seen them so well attended. And I think it's the format really works and the networking ahead of time, the way the room is structured. I just think you're doing a really good job with it, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
Yeah, it is.
It's a really nice, it's probably one of the larger meetings that I attend and it's a lot of engagement.
We ran out of tables and chairs.
Yeah, I
Every
came in
single
late and I couldn't eat lunch because there were no more plates, but it was okay. I didn't beforehand.
You should have told me.
No, I mean, I have to penalize myself for being late, otherwise, like, there's no deterrent for me.
And we always use a local business for the food.
Yeah.
Okay, that's everything.
All right. Thank you to our Ivy Safe partners. Thank you to our Ivy Safe reps. Thank you, Norfolk. Now we move on to item 4.5, resolution 24-9.
I'll turn this over to Jamie, who put together the resolution. But it is a resolution for us to be able to deal with claims without it coming to the board every time.
Yeah, so at one of our previous meetings, the board gave Jonathan and I direction to come up with a delegation of authority to Jonathan and myself in order for us to have more leeway in handling claims that are submitted to the district. And this is claims for like personal injury, property damage, things of that sort. And there is a provision under the government code that allows for a delegation of authority to an employee. And so you have to do it via resolution. Since we are not a city, we cannot adopt an ordinance or put it in our charter. And so because it requires delegation to an employee, I have delegated the authority to Jonathan. That's how it's currently drafted, and then he will just consult me in the process as legal counsel because I'm not an employee. So this will cover everything that is under the board's authority under the Government Claims Act. Oh, yeah, that's nice. And it includes like, you know, all of the administration, so processing the claims, providing the notices, things like that, as well as settlement authority. One of the things that the code provides is that if you're going to delegate settlement authority, you can delegate up to $50,000. Anything over that still has to be brought to the board for consideration. We left that number blank as a not to exceed number, so we do need direction and discussion from the board as to what number you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with a $50,000 limit or anything below that, that's what we would just need to fill in the resolution. And also I noticed as well, I had originally drafted it as the general manager or his or her designee. And that's not throughout, but that would be up to Jonathan whether or not you want to have the ability to designate someone else just in case you're unavailable. And I could just add that language every time it says general manager, it would say or his or her designee.
Yeah, just in case, but I'll handle it 90%.
Yeah.
99%.
And then that last language, upon written order of the general manager, that just means if he decides to settle a claim, he will have to put something in writing to whoever's managing district's general fund, and that's how it will get paid out. But that language, it's really archaic and weird, but that's how it's written in the government code, so.
And I managed general. Tell myself.
Yeah, a warrant shall be issued. So warrants are like what requests the money from the treasury, which is the general fund. Yeah, it's called warrants, demand, and payroll usually. I don't know why I love that, but it's old government language. So yeah, so we just need to know what the board is comfortable with in terms of settlement authority, or if you even want to delegate authority to Jonathan. This is just an easier way to process these claims because we do get claims from time to time. You guys just considered one tonight, so.
Which was more than $50,000.
Which was more than $50,000, yes.
We have an amount that we need to approve expenditures.
1,500.
1,500.
It's, yeah,
We're
Jonathan's
gonna change
contracting
it.
Oh, that's
authority is
good.
$1,500. And that was, my understanding is, that was when the district was first founded. They didn't have any money, so it was a very low signing authority.
They have an operating budget of $1,500.
Yeah, but did we didn't ever increase that?
That would come
No,
to
that
policy committee, so-
we're taking to the policy committee to increase his signing authority, yeah.
So could you have this higher than that? Because that's contracting, and this is,
Yeah, this would be completely separate.
so they don't really
No.
relate to each other.
The contracting authority would be more about procurement of services. This is settlement authority, so it's a delegation of authority under a different government code section. So there wouldn't be an issue with that.
So the fact that we had this claim on consent tonight, which the recommendation was rejected and it's like on there on the agenda.
Yes.
So if, let's say, we set the limit at like $25,000 and we got one that was $26,000, is this the process by which the recommendation would come to us as like a consent agenda item? Or is it like we go into closed session and they brief?
Yeah, that would be dependent on what Jonathan and I think on whether it deserves more of a discussion and closed session discussion, and we need direction in order to engage in settlement discussions or something like that. Or if we get a recommendation from our insurance carrier that, that this isn't something that the district is liable for, we think that you should just reject it. Then it would more than likely come on consent calendar. But that would be a discussion that Jonathan and I would have.
But the letter of rejection to a claimant, for example, that's something that has to be an agenda item.
No, the notice that goes out after the fact, after the board makes its decision. which is the notice that says your claim has been rejected. And that's something that we have to do under the Government Claims Act, because if we don't, then they have a longer time period to sue us. But the board, what the board considers when we bring a claim to you is just whether or not to accept the claim and settle it, and how much, or just reject it. And then we send a letter of rejection, which says your claim has been rejected. You have 6 months from today's date or from the date of the notice to file a claim against the district in state court. You need to consult an attorney. There's all this language that we have to put in there by statute. So that's handled on the administrative side, and that's information that Jonathan and I would send out to the claimant once the board makes a decision.
Okay. Like, I guess the reason that I'm asking is just so, like, with the one that came to us today, which was denied, like, there's an attachment on there that's got like the person's name, their address, their birthday, like some pretty sensitive information.
Yeah.
And I, in the process of denying a claim, I wouldn't want to inadvertently piss someone off because we just put all that personal information out there on a public agenda. So I guess what I'm asking is, like, because we do this policy, is that going to prevent that stuff from getting on the agenda in the future?
Yes. So
Because we're only doing it this way because we didn't have something in place.
Correct.
Okay.
So when a person submits a claim to any public entity and they put that information, one of the things that we are required to do is put the claim on the agenda so other people have notice of what the claim is when you're making a decision. That information, when they submit it, becomes a public record and they no longer have any privacy right to that information. That being said, if we had authority to handle these claims internally, administratively, at least with claims up to $50,000, assuming you authorized the settlement limit, we could handle those claims internally and it would never be posted on the agenda or anything like that.
Just really quick, Jamie, just to clarify, something you said, this $1 million one, since we're rejecting it, that would still
Correct.
come to the agenda.
Well, the $1 million would if it's okay. It gets a little bit complicated, but assuming Jonathan and I decide we get a claim for $1 million, excluding the one that we dealt with today, assuming we get a claim for $1 million and we decide that we're going to reject it, there is no settlement authority that needs to be delegated. So we will just reject it on our own.
Gotcha. So because we don't have a policy like this, we had to delegate you the authority to even deny it.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
And
okay.
that the government code requires a formal resolution delegating authority.
Yes.
And if there is no delegation of authority, we have to bring every single claim to you.
Understood.
So we
So
would
we
not
should
have had to see that on the administrative agenda because of the delegation we've made to you.
Correct.
And the $50,000 limit is only pertinent in regards to how much money we want to pay the person.
Yes.
To settle.
So if we get a claim for $1 million and we think, oh shoot, the district is liable for $1 million, and we think that it needs to be settled, that would probably be something that Jonathan and I would bring in closed session and have a conversation.
Yes, you would.
But even in closed session, when we put the closed session language on the agenda, there is an attorney general opinion that says that you have to post the claim on the agenda and include it in the agenda packet. So the public has notice of what you're discussing.
We had to deal with the same thing at City College
Yeah.
really recently. And our self-insurance fund, just for your guys' reference, is $146,000. But usually our insurance company will help pay for some or most of the claims, depending on how they feel about it.
So is it the case that if a claim comes before us, say we approve this, a claim comes before the district, it's less than 50,000, then you and Jonathan would be taking action on it without the board's input?
Correct.
Unless we
Jonathan
think-
would it says nothing herein is an abrogation of the board's authority under the Government Claims Act. So you could adopt this resolution and then say, we still want you guys to bring the claims to us every time. This is just delegating the authority. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's how we have to operate. And that can be, and also Jonathan has the discretion at any time to bring claims to the board, even if it's not a high amount, if he feels that it's politically sensitive or it's someone in the community that he thinks that it warrants a bigger discussion, he can always bring that to the board as well.
And the 50,000 is just, that comes from government code.
Yeah, that's in the government code. Anything above $50,000 has to be in a city charter.
And that's settlement, so
Yeah.
it's the money we pay out.
And so do you have a sense about what you think would be a reasonable amount to authorize you to offer in settlement?
I don't have a recommendation. I think, our self-insurance fund is 146,000. So 50,000 is a third of that, essentially.
So if our insurance company paid it, that would constitute a settlement?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And if they recommended paying it, if it's over $50,000, we would still need to bring that back to get approval.
Realistically, it seems like 5 or 10,000 is what you'd be comfortable
just paying
managing
out.
as a nuisance claim.
Yeah. I mean, we've gotten 2 claims, one for $1 million and one for like $2,000. So the $2,000 one, we definitely could have just handled, but that was also more complex, and we did bring it to the board.
Probably wanted to talk to us about it anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd keep you updated on all the claims that do come in, and yeah, like this one, I mean, we had to do it, but if we had this policy in place, I would have made you aware
Yeah,
of
and
this
also
before
it
we
gives you
rejected.
the latitude to move quickly, and sometimes, a quick resolution, stops festering.
Yeah. Our questions on like, do you own the road? No. Do you own, they had just a series of questions for me. I answered them and they said, we, recommend you reject this. So they're pretty fast in working with us too. So we have a good system, and we do meet pretty often as a board. So it's not a delay if we had to come to the board. It wouldn't delay us, I think, in responding in most cases.
We have, under the government code, 45 days to act on any claim that's submitted. So that's, even if one meeting is canceled, we would usually be able to get it on the second meeting.
Within 30.
And so maybe as a follow-up question to figure out where to set it out, because you work with a lot of cities and you see like a lot of the claims that end up getting approved, like they'll have like a risk management department that'll recommend like pretty set amounts for some of the stuff that's pretty standard. Like I've heard some stuff for sidewalks, like trip and fall, there's like usually a pretty standard amount. So I know we're asking you to opine on policy, but just since you have familiarity with it, would you have any policy opinions?
That's a tough question. I would say it depends. Some cities have what is essentially, like, for lack of a better word, like a slush fund, that they have money that's set aside.
That is a bad word.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Recommendation, and you can take it or not, but you can direct us to pay it out of this fund. And that will be paid out first before we touch any of our pooled money. Some people have it set up where the city manager can approve settlement up to his signing authority, which is common. In most cases, that's anywhere between $20,000 to $30,000. $30,000, I would say, is standard. And then some cities just, like I've seen cities delegate full authority. Do whatever you have to do. We don't even want to see these. And we'll delegate authority to in my cities, especially when you're dealing with like police department, wrongful death, things like that. The claims get up to millions of dollars. So it's hard to say. I mean, because we're not dealing with those kinds of issues, but
Yeah, the kind of stuff I could see is like trip and fall at community center.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's helpful. I mean, based on that, it seems like you probably don't, we're not at the city level, but maybe if we did like $15,000, that's half of the standard.
Yeah, I was thinking like 20. That's what I was thinking, but I think, yeah, I agree.
Feel very unqualified to make that call, but again,
can always
I
come
think
back.
We can
Yeah.
always
like you
come
mentioned,
back.
he's
Like,
still
we can
gonna
always
bring
just
the
be
big ones to us
If it
anyway.
goes over $10,000, Jonathan is probably gonna bring it to us anyway,
Yeah.
even if we set the cap at 50.
Since
So
we-
setting it at
since
like
we don't get
15 or
more.
20 anyway, it's like, that's the standard.
And we can also too wait for the policy committee to consider what they would recommend his procurement signing authority to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me that they would have some relationship to each other.
Yeah, I mean, like internally, you know, when you're thinking about it, it would make sense just to have one number that you're thinking about. So this doesn't
then-
have to be approved today. We can think about it.
Well, let's do it because it sounds like we're in a weird position
Yeah.
where stuff has to go back on the agenda if we don't do it. And the signing authority is 1,500.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the signing authority is
currently.
1,500.
Well, let's do 1,500 now, and then we can adjust them both when there's a policy committee recommendation.
I like that idea. I like that.
Do we have to make that a motion to like change that in the resolution or? are we-
It's
You
a
can just
blank right now.
Pass it as
They
amended.
were waiting.
As
Yeah,
amended.
Why do we have to make a decision now?
Because we
Because
want
we need to
this whole
adopt the
authority.
resolution,
So we
because
can
otherwise
do
this
it.
stuff's gonna
Yeah,
come back
because
on
this
the
is just for
agenda.
settlement, so just so that we reject some claims that are not gonna
Between,
be
before
settled.
we bring up the next.
You never
Yeah.
know.
Oh, I
We've
see
gotten
what you're
two
saying.
claims. One we got withdrawn. We were able to convince one of them to withdraw their claim because we were the wrong entity.
Right,
That's the basis we rejected this other one. 'Cause
Yeah.
We were the wrong entity. But people do or not withdraw.
Okay, so
let's do a motion, buddy.
I'll make a motion to approve this
That's fine.
and fill $1,500 in the blank to be consistent with our contracting authority and subject to change when that changes.
I'll second.
And I would also recommend the addition of the general manager's
As-
designee. Yes.
And I'll also add that to my motion.
all right, we have the motion by Tofflet and the second by Brandt. Is there any public comment on this motion? I see no public comment on this motion. So I'm gonna go to a vote. All those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no.
Who's the second?
Brandt. And this motion passes 6-0-0-1. All right, that concludes our discussion and action items. We'll move on to section 5 reports. We have 5.1 reports from members of the board. Are there any members of the board who wish to share a report?
Sorry.
Just excited to join the parking town hall tomorrow and
Yeah,
gonna sit in on the focus group with the local businesses too.
nice.
I'll share a brief report. This will probably come in a future agenda item, but I've been talking with Jonathan and with the City of Goleta and their staff about the Library Advisory Commission seat. And I have to find like a spam email or something to try and figure out, make sure that we keep our seat active with me, or if the board decides to have somebody else be in that seat. But that'll be coming up soon. So we're getting to that time of rethinking our commitments. Now, section 5.2, reports from standing and ad hoc committees. Are there any reports? I see none. Report from district council.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. And 5.4, report from our general manager and staff.
Okay, I asked Sydney if she's gonna talk on her thing, so I'll go to the other parts of the report first and come back to her, but we're finalizing or coming close to finishing our work with our pricing consultants for the compost, collective compost. They've done a lot of market research surveys and gotten out there in the community to talk to potential customers, Santa Barbara and Goleta, and do a lot of that work. So they said that it's been very successful so far, and they're gonna now move to customer interviews and focus groups on our products. In this weekend, we have the community-wide yard sale, the second annual. All the spots are full. It was high demand to get a spot to sell your things at the community center lot, and then there's a bunch of people throughout Isla Vista selling at their own yards. So Jen has been working hard on that. You heard already the report on IV Safe. I've been sending you all the monthly updates from Detective Avila, and our rental housing mediation program. We did not have the report yet to the board, the annual report. Our mediator is working. He's semi-retired, but he's trying to finish this as his last act with us. But he's agreed to a June deadline for the first June meeting to get that to you all. So Sydney's finished, it's all done except for his section, and we're just trying to bring that to a close and get it to you guys. Another event to highlight at the community center this Friday is the Fix It Fair. It's been a quarterly event that's been very popular. Another thing on the community center, I already emailed you all, but we got the landmark sign now. It looks very nice. There's also new signage on the side of the building that says Isla Vista Community Center. So it's just more visibility for us. And then I was invited yesterday to meet with the county community services department and their workforce housing consultant who are studying the feasibility of our site. It looks like they're less willing to consider the solar parking lot than before. They just really see those parking spots as a big obstacle compared to a building that has community events in it, but we'll see. But they did invite me to a meeting in the next week or so. So yeah, the town hall is tomorrow for parking and transportation. So we combine the two. There's focus groups throughout the day. There can be last minute show ups to these. So if you know anybody who wants to give input as a long-term resident, student, business owner, property provider, they're welcome to join. We're gonna have a list of draft concepts and for parking under 5 different areas, pretty specific plans and ideas that people can vote on if they support or don't support that idea. And then there's also going to be a very full list, I think of maybe 40 different projects for the mobility plan that people can, they're sorted by location, and then there's different improvements per location. So the different streets and intersections in IV. We've been waiting to get this for a year, and we finally got it with our new consultant. It's really exciting to see, but that's what people will also be prioritizing tomorrow. They'll be ranking their top 5 locations they want to see improvements at, and then what improvements they'd like to see at that location. But it's not free for all. We've set the field of what they can vote for. So it's going to be an exciting night tomorrow for 2 hours. People will get to work on that. Just a general update on what the county has done with their housing element, which is the Friendship Manor parking lot, grass lot, was the only site in Isla Vista proper to get rezoned. That was in the housing element that was passed last Friday. with the library project, we just had a little snag in that our liaison at the county, Ashley, left her position last week. And so, we're trying to find out who our new contact is to keep that conversation going. I thought we had a really great retreat, and we'll be bringing back at the next meeting some of the next steps from the retreat. So like the new job descriptions and the board goals and other things that we discussed at the retreat will be coming back. And I will report that as of today, the budget situation is looking slightly more positive. Are some of your utility taxes are coming in, better or just as what we need them to be? And the finance committee discussed a planning for revenues of 25,000 from facility rentals, just to match what we charge for cleaning or what we get charged for cleaning costs for the two spaces. So it's just looking a little better now than it was before, but it is going to be an evolving process. This statement might not hold true for another 2 weeks, but it's looking good as of today, or better as of today. I also attended the Bluff Safety Town Hall last week with Supervisor Capps that was focused on DP residents themselves to share their issues. There were, a handful of DP residents who did show up, a lot of them friends of people who had passed away falling from the cliffs. And they were, there was strong support from the student community on, who cares? Let's just get the fences higher. And there was, they said, it's not the nicest looking thing, but it's better than not having them. So that's what I heard there. And I shared some comments around, you just got to design around human behavior. You can't just expect behavior to work itself out every time. You just have to have a design around what actually happens. And then next week, we're also meeting, I think it's next week. Oh, before the next board meeting, we're meeting with IPRPD again in our leadership meeting. So we've kept those going every month. And we had worked with them on our county settlement fund money recommendations. So and they actually got to influence in a good way the recommendations for the mobility plan. So things are working well on our partnerships there. And then I'll see if Sydney has anything to say. Oh, I
messaged you, but you covered it all. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We have
Hope to see everyone tomorrow.
Okay.
Oh, one thing that was in Sydney's message that I just read that I didn't mention is that it was in the resolution you approved, but on May 23rd of 2024, we're having a remembrance event for the 2014 tragedy. It's at 12 to 1 p.m. at the Love and Remembrance Garden. It'll be live streamed and in person.
Does Sydney need a babysitter tomorrow night? Just out of
I'm
curiosity.
very grateful for my mother-in-law for 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. day. She's very excited.
The same.
Yes, very grateful.
Yes, so we have a couple items on the agenda today. The first is item 6.1, General Manager Annual Performance and Salary Review pursuant to Government Code Section 549571. And number 6.2, Public Employee Discipline Dismissal Release under Government Code Section 549571. Item 6.3 is going to be pulled from the agenda and will be rescheduled, so we will not be discussing that one tonight.
All right, thank you. Okay. Put us into closed session digitally.
Oh, yes, let me pull up the agenda.
I think we're live again.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to reconvene this Iowa Community Services District regular meeting. Council, can you read us out of closed session?
Yes, so the board met in closed session on item 6.1, general manager annual performance and salary review. Under government code section 54957B1, discussion was had, direction given to staff, no reportable action taken. The board also met in closed session regarding employee discipline dismissal release under government code section 54957B1, discussion was had. No reportable action taken. Again, the board did not meet on item 6.3.
Thank you. Now move on to item 7, future meeting dates and future agenda items. The next regular meeting of the board of directors will take place on May 28th, 2024 at 6 p.m. on Zoom and at the community room, 970 Embarcadero Del Mar, Isla Vista, California. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.